Okay, let's get started here. So, hello everybody. Um, Hi from DIAG, the DIAG team. Um, I'm the person representing DIAG. I don't want to say that I'm the leader because DIAG isn't a top-down organization, um, and um, we formed because we were waiting for the cavalry to come, and they didn't show up, and there was no Democratic group, which we needed desperately. We know that if um, the issues around gender are going to end, the only way it's going to end is if the left stops promoting gender ideology. So, some of us are parents, some are teachers, we have attorneys, we have, it's just a pretty wide ranging group of just people. None of us are experts in this. None of us are public relations people. We don't have that kind of capacity. We just have skill sets. And so uh, that's who we are. We're all volunteers. There's no funding. We don't even have anything to. If somebody gave us money, we wouldn't know what to do with it. We don't even have, a business account or anything like that yet. And it's, for me, I think people have seen a lot of this, that people are suspicious of us because we're not outing ourselves. And, um, this is an organization of people who have families and jobs that would be at risk, like a lot of people that are fighting this. I mean, if this wasn't the case, this wouldn't be a problem. It's the fact that we're all silenced is the problem. So we're not going to out ourselves. If you're a reporter and you'd like to have an interview, we'll do that. But we're just not going to out ourselves for this. But in some ways, that makes the most sense because, as I said, we're not a top-down organization. We're just a grassroots organization of people, and this people wondering if we're some kind of right-wing psyops operation is, for me, it's really funny because I don't know if you saw us all at our kitchen tables and our, in our closets, hiding from our families sometimes, and just, trying to figure out how to do this. I think you'd see how ludicrous that is. But honestly, my feeling is, if what we wanted, at first I couldn't figure out like what would be the end game. I mean, if you go to our website, um, what kind of mind control are we trying to do there by producing, evidence-based content? But then in speaking to people, I thought the idea was that, well, you'll get people to be negative about the Dems and they won't vote for them. And quite frankly, if that's what we wanted, we would leave the Democrats to continue to spiral downwards into, the unreality, um, in the unreal direction that they're headed. Because I think the tide is turning. I think, we can see, that people are done with this. They're done with the harm, and they're done with the harm to children and young people. They're done with harm to women and girls and the LGBT community. Um, we've had it. So what we're trying to do is save the Democratic Party from itself to a certain extent. Um, and I think even though many of us are quite angry with what the Democratic Party did um, in terms of promoting this, this is the party that many of us um, were part of for decades, and we see the good in it. We're liberals. We value liberal principles, and we need a party that represents us. So we're not ready to abandon the Democratic Party yet. I don't know what else we need to do to prove that we're not we're not I hate to laugh, but it's just, if you knew us, and some people do, you'll see who's here today. Some of our speakers, these are people who know us personally, and that should give you an idea of who we are. But we're not out to change anybody's mind. We'd like to convince people that the evidence points away from gender ideology. But that, go to our website. Nobody's forcing anybody to join. We're not keeping, there's not a members only section. So that's who we are. Now, for a couple of basics here, if you haven't been on a space before, if you want to, so if you want to speak, there's a way to raise your hand. There's a little heart at the bottom, and you go to the heart and you click that icon, and there's some kind of wavy hand. So go ahead and do that, and that'll tell, yeah, to the right of your name, there's some place to speak, I guess. So yeah, to the right of the people's names is the invite to speak. So that's what we're saying. So that's how you'll speak. What we're going to do is we're going to limit people to 2 minutes, the general audience. We do want you to speak, but we want to limit it to 2 minutes because we want to hear from as many people as possible. So we're going to do that. We will have some speakers here, and we'll give them more time. I think we all want to hear what people have to say, and but we do want to get as many people on as possible. And you're feel free to get back in the queue, get back in line if your 2 minutes is up and you still have stuff to say. Let's see. In terms of people, the idea that we're grifters or something like that. We're looking for money. As I said, we don't have enough funding mechanism for accepting funds. We will be starting the process of securing nonprofit status. We're going to apply for that, and mostly so that we can apply at some point for grants, and also so that we can take donations. And in terms of what we use the money for, there's a couple things in our plans. The first is, we just do have operating expenses, the website, and that I don't know how many of you have been to our website. I want to thank. We have DIAG members here, and I want to thank them. This was a massive team effort and quick. I don't know that other organizations can move as nimbly and as quickly as we did, but really this thing came together very quickly. And I know that there are still some holes on the website that we're anxious to fill. There just honestly weren't enough hours in a day. But this was a team effort, and I really want to thank the team. We had some amazing, talented, and wonderful people. So, but if you go on the website, on the homepage, there's a map, and if you're looking for your little dot on the map and you don't see it, just be patient, because somebody has to actually physically place those dots, look up the zip code. We're only asking for zip code from people. We really respect your own anonymity and safety, privacy. So we're collecting very little, just enough to put you on a map. So that has to happen manually until we get some funding and we can get a program to actually hook that into the database. So that chore will be gone. That would be great. And then the next thing would be to get some money so that we can do some focus group testing. Part of what we're about is evidence-based medicine. That's a big focus. We believe that everybody deserves evidence-based medicine, and nobody should accept what passes for medical care under the guise of gender-affirming care, because it's not care to introduce illness into healthy bodies for whatever reason. There should be better options for anyone. If medical care is causing harm, that shouldn't be acceptable. So we're about evidence-based care in general, and evidence-based messaging. And what I mean by that is that we currently have a section called Let's Talk About It on the website. And what we do know is kind of counterintuitive, that if you talk to somebody about this who doesn't agree and you want to change their mind, you want to broaden their understanding, you want to provide information that might get them to change their minds. And what doesn't work is to present them with facts and data. Most of us who came into this not voluntarily thought that we could rationalize, rational, that's not what I want to say, like, talk people out of it with rational discard, right? We could engage them in a rational conversation, that's what I want to say. And it turns out that does not work. It just doesn't work. People don't want to hear it. People can't hear it. And so there's got to be other ways to reach people. And so one thing we want to do is we want to do some listening sessions and some focus groups and find out what kind of messaging actually works with people. How do you get people to understand, the reality of what's happening? People don't believe it. People, think you're lying. People think that they know because they're getting their information from the experts. So, we have to have evidence-based methods of communicating with people. So that's the other thing that funding would go to if we did get funding. Anyways, I feel like I've burbled on for long enough. I'd like to hear from some of our speakers. So
I
let's
can
see.
speak.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Kara, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm going to give my real name since my real name is already out there. So this is Erin Friday, and I am a Democrat of 37 years. Don't feel like I'm going to leave the party just yet, but I might. And I appreciate this group because we really do need to figure out the methodology to reach the Democrats, especially if you're in a liberal state, because we don't have a chance of having rational discussions with lawmakers while the Democrats continuously um, pass laws that are, harming our kids. And it's a really strange tightrope that we have to walk, because I work with the very liberal left, meaning radical feminists, and then I work with the the right also. And part of the reason how we got here is because we were siloed, and I'm not blaming either party for that, or should I say I'm blaming both parties for that. But we became Team A and Team B, and maybe that was because of a Trump, who knows. But where we don't talk to each other, and if somebody is a Republican, God forbid we would have a conversation with them. And if somebody's a Democrat, to them, God forbid they would listen to anything that they have to say. And so we have to bridge that gap. And so this group, I think the design of it is to bridge that gap and to also disavow those people on the right that all Democrats are crazy and that we are all gung-ho about harming kids and taking away parental rights, because it's just not true. So I just love the website. It's amazing. And I love that this group is together because for the first time in 4 years of me doing this, I had a Democrat lawmaker in California spend an hour and a half of his time, a senator, talking to me. I didn't think that was possible. An hour and a half. Till 6:30 at night, he spoke with me. So there is a sea change, and it has to come from both sides of the aisle in order for us to be successful and end this time in history. So that's all I have to say. I don't know if something's going on, but I'm going to go ahead and call on Kara Dansky.
Okay, was that Erin?
Yeah, hi.
Okay, hi, Erin. Um, so I want to say first, mad props to Erin for everything that she's doing in California with the voter initiatives. And really, seriously, Diag, well done, well done. I hear you in everything you said about in your introduction about the challenges of getting the website up and the fundraising and the incorporating and all of those things. It's work. It is such serious work and it's hard. And I really want to congratulate you, Diag, for doing that. I need to say that I am the president of Women's Declaration International USA. We are a nonpartisan organization. As such, WDI USA cannot formally support any Democratic or Republican effort because we're nonpartisan. I am here solely in my personal capacity as a really angry Democrat, lifelong Democrat since 1990, except for a very short period of time when I was a member of the California Green Party. I really salute Diag for what you're doing. Again, WDI USA can't support a partisan effort, but speaking solely for myself, I am very excited about this initiative and I am very, very much looking forward to hearing more about what it produces. I guess I will also just say to the woman who introduced this space, you're gonna get called a right wing fascist. You're gonna get called a grifter. It's not fun. Those of us who have been doing this for years, and some of us for decades, have been getting called Nazi, grifters, etc., etc., etc. It's not fun. You just gotta deflect it and move on and do what you're doing because what you are doing is so valuable. And I just really want to thank Diag for what you're doing. That's all for me for now. I'm going to stay in this space because I'm very excited to hear what others have to say.
All right. I don't know if Diag is having some technical problems, but I'm going to continue to, I guess, run this space for as long as I'm allowed to because I'm bossy. Um, uh, let's see. I see Cynthia. Why don't you speak?
Yes, hello, Erin, and thank you for taking the initiative. First of all, I have to just ditto Kara and Erin and saying thank you so much for starting up this organization. It seems like a no-brainer right now, but I certainly didn't think up this, and the people that I know didn't think up this type of an organization. So I really have to just applaud you and want to support you in everything that you're doing. So I'm Cynthia Cravens, and I am out. And the reason is, one of the reasons is that I'm running for California State Senate, District 11. The incumbent, and that's in San Francisco, the incumbent senator is Scott Wiener, who possibly may be the most prolific legislator in terms of promoting gender identity legislation in the country, quite possibly. And so my campaign is about one of the main points of my campaign is about providing space for Democrats to speak out, to make their points known, and to feel more confident in their voices. That's a major point of my campaign, and I'm just so pleased to.
Is this frozen or or is everyone just being silent?
I'm not sure exactly. I was thought that it was just me.
Okay, I thought it might have been frozen. I don't know. I'm just gonna talk because it's better than complete silence. I'd like to maybe segue a little bit into I'm someone who came from the left. I still consider myself very much on the left in many ways. And so I try to use a lot of values that I still have with me, that I hope is still shared by people on the left when I'm trying to talk to people on the left about these issues about gender. My topic was, sort of my communication strategies, I guess, to when I'm talking to people on the left based on, since I've coming from the left, I assume that a lot of the people who are still identify that way share a lot of my, core values, that they've sort of just been taken over by this ideology. So what I try to do is I kind of try to flip the script on them and really show them why the values that they're purporting to have actually like are completely subverted by gender ideology and what it does. So, most people on the left would say that they're, against having kids and adults conform to these rigid stereotypes. And so I try to show them how gender ideology solidifies these stereotypes, literally now defines men and women by masculine and feminine traits. And this is sort of, diametrically opposed to what a lot of the, brave crusading women's rights activists have fought for in the past. A lot of Democrats, we're the party of science. This is something that I was convinced of when I was on the left. So it's useful to show how the U.S. is increasingly just an outlier in the world regarding these policies for gender affirming care. We have places like Sweden, Denmark, UK, Norway, even the WHO admitted lack of evidence for like long-term benefits of gender affirming care. And then the idea that you can be born in the wrong body is completely bonkers, or that sex is a social construct. There's plenty of places you can go, either my work or others out there talking about the biology of sex in just plain terms, not coming from a conservative or religious background. A lot of people on the left are also rightfully, I think, against gay conversion therapy. So I try to show them why, transitioning kids is sort of a new version of conversion therapy. These kids are likely to grow up to be gay. And so, whereas traditional conversion therapy was modifying or trying to modify kids' minds to sort of match their bodies, like you're a boy, you should be attracted to girls type of thing. Now it's really modifying their bodies to match their minds and make them straight that way. These are all just ways I like to try to maybe cause people on the left to just think about the core values they already have and why gender ideology is actually opposed to all these. And I think those are valuable places to sort of key in on.
I think that what you point out is how regressive this movement is. I think it set us back decades. And what's interesting to me when I talk to people is young people don't have a clue that it's regressive. They don't have a clue. I had somebody say to me, well, why don't you just say it's okay for any kind of boy to be a boy? And I thought, well, who said they couldn't? Where did anybody come up with that idea that you you had to fit some kind of definition? But anyways, let's get to our next speaker, which is Christina. Christina, do you want to join us?
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm a lifelong liberal. I voted Democrat in every presidential election since I was 18. Not so sure if I'll be voting in the upcoming election, but that's my voting history. I became a journalist about 2 years ago because I saw a huge problem in how the mainstream media was covering trans issues, in particular the gender affirming model of care. They basically just repeat what is told to them by activist organizations and fail to objectively and accurately report on the facts that there's no good evidence that the gender affirming model is helping people, and there's increasing evidence that it's actually causing a lot of harm. And I understand how difficult it is for people to come to these realizations when it feels like everyone is telling them one narrative. The US based medical organizations, the mainstream media, gay and civil rights organizations, and even the Biden administration. Activists have been very effective at convincing the left that being trans is exactly like being gay, that they're, born that way, when the reality is it's a psychiatric condition that has an 85% desistance rate in use that people can be socially influenced to adopt. So I concentrate a lot of my messaging is directed towards the left, towards that audience, and I'm really glad that this organization was formed and happy to help in any way that I can. And I just wanted to be here to show my support. And I'm glad that this issue is getting more bipartisan support. We have Democrats in 4 states now that have voted against bills that, were for youth medicalization. So, bipartisan support is growing, and I hope that this org can help bring more people to realize that, everything we've been saying.
Yeah.
That's all.
Next. Thank you, Christina. Matt, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to chime in and say, as a lifelong Democrat, that I knew this would happen. I thought that this would happen, that Democrats would have to organize in order to, let's say, get Democratic office holders to respect the science, the actual science. I predicted this, not because I'm a psychic, but I could see it coming in 2018. So I left Democratic politics, actually, and that has brought me back around. And so I'm glad you exist. Now that you exist, let me just say that I'm happy to add my own voice and use my own name, because I know you guys can't. And anything that I can do to help you out in that vein, please let me know. That's it.
That's great. Thank you, Matt. We may take you up on that. Okay, anybody else? Accounts without a bio or who are hidden in some way from our co-hosts, they won't be able to speak. So just so you know that. Anybody else want to speak? If not, we'll, let's see. Oh, we have, we had one. Yeah, people who have, so raise your hand to request to speak, if you could do that. Okay, we have, that's Learned Mama. You want to speak?
Sure. I wanted to just chime in about the fact that all these political flyers are starting to come to my home, and so many of them are using women's reproductive health as, a talking point, a large talking point on their flyers. And in good consciousness now, I can no longer support any candidate that is sponsored by Planned Parenthood, because if Planned Parenthood is standing for women's reproductive health, why are they giving out drugs that actually undermine women's reproductive health? So that's my big question.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Let's go to Sharon.
Hey, thank you so much for hosting the space. My name is Sharon, and I'm the executive director of the Women's Liberation Front. We're a radical feminist org that has long been speaking out on the harms of gender ideology. We also do stand for women's reproductive rights. We'd like to end male violence and pornography and a few other things on our wish list to make the world a better place for women and girls. I want to thank you very much for this, because many of the women that end up becoming supporters of the Women's Liberation Front are coming from the progressive ranks. I myself am a progressive in California. I believe someone asked earlier about what is happening in California, what's going on differently. A couple of things I want to mention to you is that we've had a long runway with gender ideology, and there does seem to be quite a bit of fatigue now happening with California voters. We ran some polling last November that shows that gender ideology support is dropping rapidly in California. I think that's a result of putting men in women's prisons, men in women's sports, school walkouts, and various other things. Aaron Friday, who was on earlier, is launching a ballot initiative in California that would force schools to disclose to parents that their child is transitioning, would preserve women's sports, right, and ban medical practices on kids, trans surgeries on kids. So it is pretty novel. She's got to gather a lot of signatures in a very short time for it to appear on this November's ballot. But our suspicion is, given our polling, that we saw a lot of progressives that started losing support for gender ideology. It's kind of, we feel like this is a tide that could be turning California. Like I say, most of our supporters are progressives and independent women feeling very politically homeless. And we're a nonpartisan org, so we welcome everybody that wants to do anything to improve the lot of women and girls in this country. But basically, I'm glad to see this coming up, because while we're seeing a lot of Republicans in legislatures being willing to carry legislation that we care about, like the Women's Bill of Rights, we haven't seen the take rate amongst the Dems. And we talked to Democratic legislators, and I don't know who is pulling their strings, but they're all terrified to do anything in this regard that would protect kids or protect women's sports. So, I think this could be a good group to give Democrats some air cover, to be able to turn to their leadership and say, look, I just can't support any more of this because my constituents hate it. And the more groups like this, like Democrats for an informed, approach to gender, spring up, I think it really helps move this needle. So I just want to thank you for starting this group and for allowing progressive folks to have maybe a political home. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope we can do that for people, give them a place to get organized, to connect. I know a lot of people want to connect to others, and that's something that's on our radar as well. Okay, folks, be sure to raise your hand if you want to speak, and then we'll move you up. Let's go to Gigi LaRue.
Hi. I just wanted to say hi and thank you for doing this. This is so needed. I work with Our Duty West Coast as the intake coordinator for parents coming in who have trans-identified kids and don't want to take a medical route. And it goes in ebbs and flows, but it's all about speaking. And speaking of crossing the aisle, Erin spoke with the Daily Signal, and that podcast had over 1 million views, and people to this day find us through hearing her talk about it. And it's because she says she's a Democrat that people feel they have the permission to pursue us and find out who we are. And in my experience, when I first got into that was my fear, that the only support would be coming from super, right wing, the bad guys. And I've learned a lot in this process that there isn't such a thing as that. It's everybody has their reasons for believing what they believe. And I think if we can all collectively agree that gender ideology is a belief system that has no place in schools, it has no place in medicine, it has no place in our government, it's literally a really destructive force. And I think if we can all agree on that, then we can move forward. And so you guys have created a platform for parents like that who want to get politically active to come and see what's going on. And I think that's really great. So I have noticed in my conversations that Democrats need permission to question this. And so if we can look them in the eye and give them that permission, perhaps we can grow our ranks. So thank you.
Right. Okay. Let's go to Cynthia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. I think I was cut off at the last during the last talk, but I wanted to add what the last speaker said about what's going on in California. Interestingly, Scott Wiener has stepped down from the LGBTQ plus caucus he was head of, and so it's possible that there are political winds that are shifting, and he's kind of becoming aware of that. Also in San Francisco, there's a lot of anger about the condition of San Francisco, and some of it is tied to identitarian politics, and I do think that some people in San Francisco are aware of this. I have to say I'm probably the only politician running in San Francisco who is open about my concern about identitarian politics in general and gender identity in particular. But I do think a lot of people are actually privately worried about it. And if the more moderate politicians can win in the upcoming March 5th election, then we could start to see real sea changes, and we could start to see people speaking out, having the courage to do that. So it's possible, we're on a upward trajectory, and hopefully DIAG will help launch that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let's move to Tali.
Hi there. Thanks for having me up here. Thanks for doing this. I missed most of the first iteration of this space. I uh, fell asleep on my couch, but I'm happy that I made it to the rest of it. Um, I'm excited to see this organization pop up. I think, like someone said before, Democrats or people on the left need permission to be able to talk about this stuff, to be able to even look at this stuff critically. Um, like Christina, I'm a lifelong Democrat, lefty. I've voted Democrat in every single election that I've ever voted in since I was 18, except for one super local election. I voted for my friend's uncle, who was a registered Republican. And so I think this is much needed. However, I personally struggle, as I'm sure with many other people in this space, with my own political identity, especially in the past few years as I've had a big political, or not political, ideological sort of shift away from identitarian politics. Um, and especially sort of on the gender stuff, but it goes a little further than that. And someone earlier mentioned the sort of science denial on the left. And that's a problem, and the reality denial. But I think the reality denial extends a little further than just gender. We have reality denial on the left of progress that's been made in this country. And that I find really hard as someone who, again, was a lifelong lefty and someone who bought into the victimization politics for a long time. So I'm glad this exists. I hope it's going to help bring a lot more smart, thoughtful, caring people who are afraid to touch this because they want to remain, capital letters, good people. I hope this will be helpful in that. But I think the left and the Democratic Party, even though I know those are not exactly synonyms, there's a lot of work to do for us classically liberal people to sort of forcefully announce our democratic status again, I guess. So anyway, thanks for letting me give this little rant.
Great. Thank you so much, Tally. Let's see. We have Esther Jenny, I think.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. It's so I don't want to say relief, but I guess that is the word. It's a relief to see somebody, taking up, creating a group for Democrats to kind of look to kind of get us grouping together under that name. I'm a lifelong Democrat as well. I'm in my 50s, so I've been voting for quite a long time. I come from a Democratic family on the East Coast, and I was just raised that way. And I'm so angry. I feel completely betrayed by the Democrats. I have not changed my party yet officially, but after Biden codified Title IX, and after seeing a Supreme Court justice say that she couldn't define the word woman because she's not a biologist, that was it for me. I really don't know if I can vote Democrat in this next election, even if Trump does run. That's how angry I am. That's how betrayed I feel. And I know so many women that feel the same way. I also know I'm in California, so I know lots of liberal women out here that are still, completely under the spell. And what's really interesting to me is how captured the media is. John Oliver, Jon Stewart, Bill Maher seems to be. I've been watching those guys for years. Love Jon Stewart, love John Oliver. Thought they, Stephen Colbert. Thought they were hilarious, right? And I totally had Trump derangement syndrome, And now I look at Jon Stewart. After he was like a hero to me for sticking up for firefighters in New York City, and then doing a huge piece about the OxyContin scandal, and then he does a piece about gender affirmation care for kids, and is yelling at this Republican. I'm not sure if she was a senator or a congressperson, but calling her a bigot basically, for thinking that sex changes on kids is wrong. And then the next week, John Oliver does a segment, and it's like it's so obvious. And then Biden has uh, Levine, doing promotional videos saying that if you don't trans your kid, you're a bad parent. I mean, it's so much bigger than just parties. This is like, it's not about Democrat or Republican anymore. This is bigger, and my friends out here are completely. They won't talk to me about this. If I bring, 'cause I know 5 boys who think they're girls right now. I know 5 boys who think they're girls. That is statistically impossible if we are to believe that trans is this, small population of people. Our children are being indoctrinated, and the Democrats are the ones that are pushing it. My side. It's a betrayal. So I just don't know. I mean, I'm grateful that you're actually, putting you're sticking with the Democrats and you haven't given up on them yet. I guess I'm not fully all the way there, but I'm like 90% there. I feel like just voting red all the way, no matter what, just to get them out. And I don't know what that will do, but that's how angry I am. Anyways, I just wanted to express that, and thank you so much for doing what you're doing and for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for speaking. Let's get James DSD on, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm James DSD. I come from the world of sex um, development disorders and how they're being misused in teaming up with these intersex as if it's something to be used to prove gender or the spectrum of gender. So I come from the world of, I was born on, basically my body is a puberty blocker. I was born with the same condition that puberty blockers cause in children. And I went to, I'm from California. I went to University of California, San Francisco, which invented gender affirming care. But I went there before gender affirming care. I went there in the 80s. So I know what these endocrinologists will not tell you, or what they just simply forgot. And when you institute a puberty blocker into a child, you are basically playing Russian roulette with their health, their lifelong health, and you're destroying their sexual function as well as numerous other things, including fertility, causing all sorts of lifelong diseases, which are already starting to show up in these detransitioners. So prepare for a large wave of victims of this medicine. Um, as far as the Democratic Party, I am from California, so I mean, what's the use of, it's just basically a democratic state. Um, I hope that this organization, it can break what is called the spiral of silence, which is when people all view this as questionable, but they all think everybody else in the room agrees with the prevailing opinion. This indicates a spiral of silence where people will go along with the majority opinion, regardless about what their personal beliefs are, and it's well documented. And the only way you can do that is to break that spell, to start coming out and saying very loudly, no, this is not the way we should go. Um, this is not what the Democratic Party traditionally was. That you've been captured by activists, and the activists are running the show, and you need to get rid of the activists who are not reality based. They're pushing agenda to promote their own power in the Democratic Party. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you again for having this organization.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let's go to Ellen.
Hi, my name is Ellen Danick. I'm in Denver, Colorado. I'll start with giving my Democratic bona fide, since everyone else is doing that. I don't remember this, but I was 10 years old when Ronald Reagan was elected, and apparently I got up and forced my family to listen to a tear-filled speech about how it was a dark day for America. So, suffice to say, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I wanted to talk just a little bit about what's going on in Colorado. I was at the Colorado legislature 2 weeks ago to speak in testimony against a bill called Tierra's Law. It's named after a drag queen in Colorado Springs, and they want to make it easy for convicted felons to change their names if they assert that they have changed gender identity. What happened in the room, and some of you may have seen this on Libs of TikTok because it went viral, there were 25 or 30 trans activists there supporting the bill. Myself and another woman were there speaking against it, and there were some other women speaking against it via video. Christina Gurkey, who was on this space earlier, I think she may have left, spoke before me, and we had been warned twice by the committee, which was 8 Democrats and 3 Republicans, that we were not allowed to dead name anyone, misgender anyone, or mention anyone's criminal history, which is pretty ironic given that this is a bill specifically to make it easier for convicted felons to change their names if they assert that they have changed their gender identity, inspired by this man, Dwayne Williams, who goes by Tiara, who is a man who claims to be a woman who has a criminal history. So I am so glad to see this organization because Christina was kicked out for saying those things, and I spoke, and my testimony did not make any difference whatsoever. I think if we have a way to talk to moderate Democrats with some sort of an association with a group that can be seen as legitimate and not coming from the right, we might actually be able to have those individual conversations to persuade these folks to do the right thing and vote against these insane bills. I know my story is not the only one, but it really did feel like we were in a 1984 novel. It was insane. As a lifelong Democrat, I could not believe the level of insanity and authoritarianism from the left that I both experienced and witnessed in that room. So thanks for letting me talk, and nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. Let's go to Alex.
Hi, y'all. My name's Alex. I am a young gay male. I consider myself to be a libertarian, but I am sort of advocating for greater awareness of some of the issues around, uh, I guess, the proliferation of gender ideology. I have friends who are trans. I have friends who are gay, bi. I have friends who are detrans as well. And I'm really working towards trying to bring awareness of the nuance in this conversation, and also uh, trying to be respectful, because I think this should be a bipartisan issue, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. I think I have empathy for those of you in the room that are really on the left, because I appreciate the pressure to not speak out, given the party line, as it were. But the reality of it is, I feel like what we have in common is concern for young people and their health and wellness. Um, as someone who was a young, effeminate uh, boy once upon a time, I have a great deal of fear and horror in my heart that if I was born today, I think that I probably would have, been labeled as trans and put on that sort of road towards transition. I'm very content in my gender. I'm very content with my sex. I have a good life. But I worry about the fact that kids are already confused enough. I think that they're growing up in a whole new world. When I was growing up, the internet was still somewhat new, and there's so much more pressure and influence these days that we didn't have to deal with then. And as if figuring out your sexuality isn't enough, trying to figure out your gender is kind of insult to injury, particularly I think for those of us who potentially identify as homosexual or have same-sex attraction. Um, it does concern me that some people may see being trans as a path of less resistance than being gay. This is something that I've heard from people that are deeply, come from Christian families. They feel like that's easier on their heart, I suppose. Um, without sort of, I guess, an appreciation for the lifelong medical consequences that come along with transition. Now, I'll be very honest to say, like I said, as someone with trans friends who have medically transitioned, they will be the first to tell you that transitioning is difficult. It does not solve all of their problems. It is not a magic cure. Uh, got trans fans that are medically transitioned, they will be the first to admit it's not a magic cure. It doesn't resolve their gender dysphoria. It certainly makes it more manageable for some of them, but it isn't a magic cure. And I think some people are being deceived. I think they also push strongly against the notion of science denial, the notion that people can change their sex. That's not a thing. They are very much at peace with the reality that they are a trans male or a trans female, you know, sort of reflective of the reality of the situation. Um, I think that children are being misled, and I think that doctors are under tremendous political pressure to go along with this. And I think the same is true for parents who have children that identify as trans. And really, all I'm pushing for in this discussion is more restraint from the medical industry. I'd like to see the depoliticization of the issue. Frankly, I think it would be much better if the DSM went back to the DSM-4 with regards to the standards for diagnosing, gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria, and also recognizing that there is a difference between autogynephilia and gender dysphoria. They are not the same thing, and they cause a lot of harm, I think, particularly for trans folks who do not uh, behave the same way, and who see them largely as a threat to their safety and to their integration with the community. So I guess just to say in closing, thank you for letting me speak as someone who's maybe a little bit politically outside of the Democrat bubble. But I'm certainly an ally in the fight against the transmedicalization of children.
Well, thank you for speaking and joining with us. We're going to go to Darswood, Ultra. I don't know. You're gonna have to tell me.
Yeah, you can call me Darkwood. It's an amalgam of my real name. um, I live in Vermont. I grew up in Vermont. I spent 20 years, almost 25 years of my life living in Brooklyn, New York. I lived in the North Bay area in California until about a year and a half or so ago. I worked in human services in Marin County. I mean, I've lived in left land my whole life. Um, I'm at the younger end of the baby boom. I was a hardcore second wave feminist as a very young teenager. I am too old to have benefited from Title IX, though I certainly the Roe versus Wade made a big difference in my generation's life. I never imagined that they both, if anybody knows the history, Title IX came about 1972. Roe versus Wade was 1973. And here they are going down, in tandem with each other. The GOP took out Roe versus Wade, and the Democrats are taking out Title IX. So, it just seems like an amazing. It's phenomenal because it made such a difference. I was a girl who couldn't play sports because there was no sports. I had to wear dresses. I mean, this sounds like a cliche, but to see everything that women have fought for so long. I mean, I saw it, I lived it, and I breathed it in the 70s and the 80s. Um, so I just want to say that I come from a left of Democrat background. Of course, as one gets older, one becomes more moderate and more centrist. And to my shame, I just kind of latched on to the Democratic Party without thinking, probably since probably in the wake of Bush and 9/11 and all of that. Um, and I just kind of went along with the party. And so that's one of the things that I'm very concerned about is the polarization, because I know so many people in my personal life who are like me that began being sort of free thinkers and very critical and didn't trust the Democratic Party. We may have voted Democratic, but we never trusted the Democratic Party. We always understood that there was kind of a unitary party going on. But as this dichotomy between right and left has become so powerful over the past, I would say since the '90s, since Clinton, um, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. So I think that that's one of the challenges, is to figure out how to talk about this issue while navigating the polarization. I talk about it whenever I get a chance in my real life, and I've had some intense conversations, um, with friends and family. Um, like I said, I come from a very far radical left wing background, and people who've known me for 30 or 40 years have called me a bigot to my face. I mean, that's just kind of the brainwashing of the new Democratic Party. I would say, if you're not with us, you're against us, and if you're not with us, you must be against Trump. I mean, for Trump. And honestly, as far as Trump and Biden, I'm honestly thinking I'm just not going to vote. I'll vote in every other election. I'll never vote for Trump, but I don't think I could ever vote for Joe Biden again. I voted for him this last time, but I don't think I can. And
So, Darcy, I'm going to move on, give somebody else a chance, but thank you. I think, no, that's,
I'll leave. I'm sorry. I feel like
I think everybody is,
I'm sorry.
we've been silenced for so long. It's nice to have these opportunities to be able to talk freely.
All right. I just want to say that one more I'm sorry. I'll leave.
Don't worry about it. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we've got Women Are Real. Go ahead.
Hi. So I represent a group of California women. We're nonpartisan. There's about 120 of us around the state, although the majority of us are in the Bay Area. We come from all over the political spectrum, but all of our members agree that women deserve single-sex spaces in sports, spaces such as prisons, locker rooms, rape crisis centers, that type of thing. So we're nonpartisan, but 65% of us are Democrats, and myself, I'm a Democrat who's extremely angry with the Democrats, as many have said in this space. But I just want to say publicly thank you for doing this. And we have been already, some of our members have already been volunteering for you. And I just want to publicly say I'm happy to extend our army of volunteers to you and coordinate activism with you, events, anything you need. We're happy to support you in any way getting this thing going. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Who do we have next? I'm going to jump in here. Well, let's see. We have one who just joined us as a speaker. You want to go ahead, Miss Andress Mussolini?
Oh, hi. I didn't expect this. So I'm 22, so I only voted once in the presidential election. And yeah, I think I remember voting for a governor and I voted Democrat. And I live in a liberal city, but like it's like purple. I don't know how to describe it. And my biggest issue in reaching out to people about gender critical issues is that people sound insane when they talk about the big pharma and big tech um collusion over gender ideology. Like I feel like in my opinion the average Democrat voter is really not informed. Like they just see trans rights, human rights, and they see that Republicans are being big meanies, hurting these like innocent little trans kids. They don't understand exactly the motivating factors that these billionaires who are funding this movement have. And when you explain it, you sound like an insane person. So I feel like if you're gonna like someone needs to make a campaign which slowly makes people understand that it's not all what it seems, because dissenting views on transgenderism get censored so much. I mean, I got kicked off of like even Snapchat immediately after I started posting about transgender ideology. I was outed like as a TERF for my town, so like it's really hard. So how do you plan to reach out to the average Democrat who just wants to be like a nice person?
Yeah, well, that's a big question, is how do we reach people who really think this is about kindness? And that's where testing messaging comes in. So that's something we're going to have to figure out.
My biggest concern is males in female prisons and women's sports and domestic violence shelters and all. I just want the legal fiction, religious, pseudo-religious fiction of gender identity out of civil rights legislation, and for single-sex female spaces to be protected, and other female rights. But I hate that we have to negotiate with like what should be our basic rights as women in a society. It's really demoralizing.
Yeah. I don't think that our legislators understand it at all. Not at all. Okay, do we have more speakers? One thing I wanted to talk about was, we're going to be having more of these, essentially town halls, and but with different topics. Over time, we want to know kind of how things are going out there and what people need. So if you have any ideas for topics for our next town halls, if you could please DM us. Our DMs are open. So DM us on your ideas about that. And let's see, anybody else? Do we have anybody else who wants to speak, who hasn't spoken already? Okay, we'll do Learned Mama again.
Just to capitalize on what the young woman who just recently spoke, maybe you're not aware that they are actually teaching in school about gender identity. It's being put in under the sex ed curriculum, and it's happening at a very vulnerable time for children, which is during adolescence, when their bodies are changing significantly, their peer interactions are changing because of hormones and normal sexual urges and development. And it's an awkward, scary time for kids. And if you plant that seed, like, oh, you don't feel good about yourself or good enough, or that you don't measure up, maybe you're this other thing. And that's going to be the magic cure for your feelings of distress for not fitting in. They've over sexualized the content within the sex ed programs in schools. And, I'm a liberal, I'm a registered Democratic voter, but I think that we need to preserve kids' innocence and allow them to explore themselves without planting these ideological seeds, because this is a quasi-religious movement, that you could be born in the wrong body somehow, and that you need these invasive and drastic medical interventions to find your authentic self. This is such an existential nightmare for parents who are entrusting their children to adults in the educational sphere, and they're planting these ideological seeds as if it's true. I think there was a post by DIAG about flat earthers. It's akin to that. But the distress that parents feel over this, to me, harkens back to the days of the Salem witch trials, where everybody was afraid to say that it was a crock of poo and that this wasn't true because they would be the next person on the chopping block. And I so appreciate all the people that are stepping forward and all the organizations that are more liberal minded and democratic and see the lunacy involved in this. The fact that it's crept into so many respected institutions is, like I said, an existential crisis. How do we dig ourselves out of this hole? And can it stop today?
Yeah, well, I don't know about today, but hopefully soon. Because I don't think any of us wants to see more children and families destroyed by this. So, Matt, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to say about on the topic of messaging and communications that to an extent, what we're dealing with here is something that you can only get past. It's a belief system that you can only get past if you can invoke some sort of heuristic, either a sympathy or empathy for the person who is harmed. So, for example, let me just give you a quick example of what I mean by that. When Americans saw Leah Thomas on the trophy stand, at that moment, polls registered 62% opposition to male bodies in women's sports. And a year after Leah Thomas, those polls registered 69% opposition, which means that the opposition had increased. People had seen the unfairness with their own eyes. When they saw it, they didn't like it. They had a negative reaction to it. And I, could see that one coming. There is some evidence, I won't go into it, from people I know who were in former progressive Democratic circles who are gender critics and have suffered for it. And they tell me that there was polling very early on about this. They did internal polling and they found that this would be a terrible thing, that people would not go for it. And what they would have to do is they would have to impose it as policy. They would have to capture policy in the dead of night at the NCAA, and that's what they did. So these things, when they get seen, the public doesn't like them. So think in terms of, we have to show the public what they're not going to like. And think about that in terms of detransitioners. I see Wesley Yang there. He raised a ruckus the other day because he centers detransitioners. He's like, look, this was predictable. These are the results. And the picture is affecting. It's really affecting. So I would say that in terms of communications and messaging, you have to reach the liberal mind by appealing to a heuristic. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, agree. Before we go to the next person, I want to, because I think Aaron can't hear. What I had this problem originally, but maybe Aaron is stuck. And I want to take a moment to boost Erin's Friday's initiative, the California Protect Kids California, her ballot initiative in California, trying to get bans on medical sex trait modification for minors, and keep women's sports and spaces for females, and the schools from keeping secrets. So if you're in California, please go to the website. That's protectkidsca.com, and you can print out, I believe you print out and sign the ballot measure and then the petition, and then send it back in, or volunteer to collect signatures. And if you're not in California, please donate, because they need people. They need to pay people to collect these signatures. And we've got a little ways to go, but we know that the polling does show that the vast majority of Californians do not want gender ideology in our schools or our spaces, and we don't want our children exposed to this. And I will say that, seeing that process has been pretty eye-opening for me. The fact that Banta created this ridiculously inaccurate and negative summary for the ballot measure. This is not democracy. And to me, when the Democrats do things like that, I'm sickened. Maybe I hold Democrats to a higher standard for no good reason, but I do, and I'm disgusted when I see things like this. That's not democracy. Or people who, when we were trying to collect signatures, said we're telling people don't sign it, and that's not democracy either. Either you allow the vote, or you are an authoritarian, and you're not gonna allow people the opportunity to vote for what they want. It was pretty shocking to me. So it's please support that ballot measure initiative. It's really important, and as California goes, so does the rest of the nation. So okay, I'm going to stop pitching that, and I'm going to go to Themis Resource Fund.
Hey everybody, can you hear me okay? I'm
I
using
can.
the
Yep.
speaker.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Oh, I have to just tell you, I've been listening to this meeting tonight, and I just couldn't be more happy tonight. And also just humbled to be kind of in the space with all of these people that I know are everybody. There are so many people in here doing so much hard, good, important work. And it's, 4 years ago, we couldn't get a bill to protect minors from drugs and surgery passed in South Dakota. There was no way. To think back, that was 4 years ago. We couldn't get one word in any media that wasn't completely right wing. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't get anything passed. We couldn't make any progress. And now it's like, yeah, they're trying to keep us down, but I'm sorry, the mountains will roar. There is no way to keep this down anymore. It's not going, the pot is simmering and it's about to boil over, in my opinion. Because you can only repress the truth for so long. Even if you're organized, even if you work hard, you can only keep the truth down for so long. And the injustice that has been done to people, to so many people, is so enormous that I just don't think they're going to be able to keep going much longer. Anyway, so Themis, most of you probably know about us. We were started in order to assist detransitioners in filing and funding litigation. Find attorneys. We're working really hard to help detransitioners get some justice that is so well deserved and so hard to find. And many of you have been really helpful to us in our launching and our beginning. And I'm really inspired by this because I see people in here that have done great legislative work. I see journalists in here. I see people that are writing, people doing podcasts. It is here. They're telling the story of the parents, which is so powerful. We've got Christina in here. We've got Colin. We've got, oh my goodness, I just can't even mention all of you. But we're all working together, and I really believe that we will prevail. And so much of that is learning how to people in a way that helps them get past the highly politicized rhetoric into the truth. That what we have here is we have a humanity issue. It's not a right left issue. It is a humanity and justice issue. And I really think when we start learning to talk more clearly, more cleanly, more carefully and trying to find out where we come together. Because I do think that I do think a lot of people are well-meaning but very misinformed, and they just when they if they we can just get them to open up their ears. I think we're going to win. I do. And so anyway, I'm going to stop now, but I'm just really excited for your launch.
Thank you. We're excited too. We're really excited. It's exciting. We're going to bring Mountain Gal on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, they hear you.
Okay, great. Well, first I want to congratulate those of you who have put this together. I know all the work that's gone in and everything behind the scenes. Many of us have known each other for a long time, and just to watch everybody find whatever their niche is to fight this. I'm an independent. I'm in Texas, done a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But one thing I want to mention that this group might be able to do, and again, I missed the first beginning, so it may have already been said. And I know there's a lot of efforts going on that need a lot of money, including California and FEMIS, etc. But I seriously encourage you well, between now and the primaries, which is in the next week, to find a Democrat. Maybe you all have already got a list, but behind the closed doors in Texas, there were plenty of Democrats that seemed to be wavering or supporting many of the things didn't even understand what we were talking about and listened with an open mind. But when it came to voting, it's not something they could do. But we know of a couple of them. I'm going to mention Sean Theory. If you ever saw her impassioned 10-minute speech on voting for the minors ban, but there are some brave Democrats in the states that have passed minors bans. Granted, they were, red states, but for those of you who are Democrats and with the bona fides that all of you have been talking about, if there's a way you can reach out to those legislators that are being heavily primaried on one issue, on one vote, it doesn't matter how many times they voted for the causes that are important to their party. This one vote they are being brought down for. And so I encourage you, maybe if there's time, to make a list of those Democrats. Sadly, there aren't that many. But I think it was at New Hampshire recently. There's 4 Texans, 2 of whom I think were not running again, so it was easy for them to make the vote. But I encourage you to look for those, and if you can, support them financially, but certainly if you can support them on whatever their social media pages are, etc., would be, I think, super helpful. I think being able to reach out to different ethnic communities could be super powerful. They traditional Democratic voters, but are not on board for this. So that's all. Again, congratulations.
Thank you. We just so you know, we did reach out to Jonah Wheeler. We did not hear back, and we'll continue to reach out to those 13 Democrats from New Hampshire, and to Sean Theory. Who's speaking? Let me try and. Oh yeah, Wes. Okay, go ahead, Wesley.
Okay, I just want to, I didn't know what was said before, so I just wanted to listen. And I'm a little bit sick and I'm very tired, so I just wanted to say something and then I'll go. And I do want to listen to the rest, as it's been a very interesting conversation so far. But the basic principle of the identitarian, the new doctrines, I refer to it as a successor ideology, is that it's a non-electoral politics of institutional capture that also happens to have captured the Democratic Party. And the way you defeat this kind of politics is that, because it's a politics that depends upon sort of using pressure tactics, using shaming tactics in order to capture decision makers, so that it's very uncomfortable for them not to do the will of a group of people who have an argument based upon a moral emergency, claims of great and terrible harm, And as a result, we've seen this tremendous, verbal inflation that results in, sort of the denial of, sort of granting access to men who say they are women, to women's spaces, sports, intimate spaces and competitions, being equated with the form of genocide. And it's a kind of reductio ad absurdum of the term, but we hear it in circulation all the time in perfect earnestness. Who actually believes it? And yet everyone acts as if. Such is the rhetorical power that has not been inflated away within places that partake of the progressive consensus. It still has the potency to coerce, compliance with these demands. But so what you want to do to defeat this kind of politics is always expand the, expand the input and the measures of democratic participation, beyond these cloistered spaces that can be controlled by emotional bullying, blackmail, and histrionics. And that's why the California referendum, I think, is so important, because it asks every member of the state, or every voter in the state, in the privacy of a voting booth, to answer yes or no on the question of, do you support child sex changes, and do you support males competing against women in sports? And it isolates the issue from the other issues that Democrats have been very successful in tethering it to: abortion, or to gay marriage, or to other more popular parts of the agenda. There's this forced teaming that is done, so that very large constituencies have to answer the question of, if you want this other thing upon which your comfort, safety, or survival depends, you're going to have to participate in this intersectional politics that involves, a deference to men who say that they are women, and involves the, telling gender confused or mentally ill children that they are born in the wrong body, and require, to be put on a regimen of the same drugs that are used to castrate adult sex offenders, right? And what we so and so what we want to do is we want to be able to create opportunities to disaggregate the unpopular issues from the popular issues on the one hand, and so, as sort of a general piece of advice for an organization that declares itself to be, Democrats for an informed approach to gender, is that you are here to represent not just the majority of the country, because the polling has shown that the majority of the country is overwhelmingly opposed to the practices that I've just described, but that you also stand for the majority of Democratic voters. And that's, of course, what the polling that has been aggregated by those who are driving the referendum have found, right? On all of these issues, on intimate space, women's intimate spaces, and on sports, and on child sex changes, a robust majority of Democrats are with us. And so the important thing to go about is not to proceed from an emphasis on the fact that, oh, okay, there is this overwhelming, overpowering, astroturfed, corporate, medical, educational, political, commercial consensus on behalf of these aberrant politics, because there is that consensus within those easily manipulated, easily bullied, easily blackmailed domains, on behalf of these practices, whether each individual in their own private conscience, to the extent that any of these people have them, would actually agree, is a different question. And it's less important than, we have to proceed from the assumption that we are the majority within the Democratic Party. And it's a scandal that there has been no one willing to speak up and represent the interests of the majority of the party, because we have this civil and human rights apparatus and this civil and human rights sort of conceptual armory that proceeds by taking initiative away from the majority, like based upon this idea that back in the the 1950s you couldn't trust the majority of the country to come to the right decision, and you needed judges to lead the way, and you needed federal power to act to break the will of the majority of the Southern public. And it's a complicated historical question. It may have been I think it was the appropriate use of such power in those instances, and nobody at the time anticipated that we would have judges then, in 70 years declaring, dictating which bathroom people are going to be using in a middle school. And that this is sort of Lior has written about this unusual kind of politics emerged to allow that to happen, and to take away to take away the ability of the will of the majority to manifest itself. And it on the transgender issue, we have reached a kind of reductio ad absurdum, of that kind of politics. And so where we have 100% compliance, among the bureaucrats and the administrators and the HR directors, on behalf of a set of transparently absurd and destructive propositions, where they are opposed by supermajorities of the public and a pretty clear majority of the Democratic voting public as well. And so that's the main thing to keep in mind at all times. So the last thing, I'll just close with a quick anecdote. The at the very height of the of the George Floyd national freakout, there was an election held in California, where President Biden, I think, got upwards of 60% of the vote. But there's also a ballot initiative on that same question about whether to reverse the results of a prior ballot initiative in 1996 that forbade the use of racial preferences in college admissions and in state hiring. And California is one of 9 states that introduced such bills, to say that in 8 of those 9 states, the public voted that no, in fact, we don't think it's consistent with our values to be apportioning opportunities on the basis of race. And that has, the polling has always shown that this is the will of the people. Affirmative action has always been rejected by robust supermajorities of the public in polls, and it happened again, right? Like the same voters who reelected Biden resoundingly defeated this measure to reintroduce racial preferences resoundingly. And they did it just on the heels, of the country burning, like on behalf of a supposed new consensus of the media and our political institutions and all the right-thinking people in our society, that we had to become increasingly more rather than less, race conscious in admissions and in the way we and of course that consensus still exists. A couple of years after that election, the Supreme Court went ahead and ruled that racial preferences in college admissions are contrary to the United States Constitution, and that, of course, that was a decision having to do with
Sorry, Wesley, we're
constitutional.
gonna
Okay,
have to keep moving.
all
So,
right,
I mean, I could personally listen to you talk all
yeah,
day long, but
but
apparently I'm not everybody. So, but these are the big questions of, what does it take to change this mechanism that's been put in place? And I don't, I mean, I don't think
the
anybody
ballot
knows.
initiative is like if it can be shown that this cannot get the support of the people in California, then that will prove more or less definitively that it will that they can't get it in the rest of the country,
Yeah.
because California is
Yeah.
going to be more supportive than any other place in the
Yeah.
country.
It's crucial. So, okay, one thing that I'm going to go to, we have some speakers, but I want to know, do we have anybody in our listener audience who doesn't agree with this, who could express kind of the left position for why they support transition for minors? I would love to hear, this is kind of my focus is trying to get messaging, and I want to understand this perspective because I don't, I just don't, and I would like to. So is there anybody, if you could ask to be a speaker and we'll move you to speaker, that would be really great. I would love that. So let's see if we can get anybody. Chris thinks that's funny. I don't think that's funny. I think we got to listen to those people and find out what they're thinking. Okay, I'm going to go to Benjamin Ryan. I think he's been long time the speaker, but didn't have his hand raised. So Benjamin, let's go to you. Yep.
I'm not sure
Yeah,
if you can hear
we
me.
can hear you.
Okay. So I'm not here to say what I think, and that's not my job as a journalist, but I think one thing that I can summarize, and this is something that I think Lior talks about a lot as well, is that the general idea is the initial reason in the Dutch protocol in the late 90s why researchers in the Netherlands decided to try giving puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones um, to prepubescent and then pubescent people is that it is very hard to pass as the other sex when you have already gone through your natural puberty. So, men have broad shoulders and big hands and jawlines and that sort of thing. And so the transitioning into sort of the opposite puberty would change that. And that ultimately it was about passing in the beginning. And again, Lior is texting me being like, don't mess up, Ben. But I think that the philosophy, the primary reason that is expressed for doing that has changed over time as like a cosmetic presentation has not been, I don't know, as convincing to people, and it has become a matter of life and death. And so it's often presented as if children do not do this, they are at very high risk of suicide. And from my knowledge of the research base, there is no evidence that giving puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to children with gender dysphoria is associated with any difference in the suicide death rate. Suicide death rate, from what we understand, and there's not that much research about the actual death rate. There's more research about suicidality, thoughts and feelings and behaviors of suicide. But the suicide death rate is maybe 3 to 6 times higher amongst children with gender dysphoria, adolescents. But suicide deaths themselves are in fact very rare in that cohort of people, from what we understand. And it's something that needs more research that people don't understand well enough. But I guess as a journalist, one thing that I would ask for all of you is there are some people who are essentially what's called gender essentialists, that they do believe that there is such thing as being transgender, having a transgender soul, if you will, and that it is in the best interest for people like that to transition socially, maybe medically, etc., in their lives. So I would be curious to know from speakers whether they believe in that or not, and if so, if they sort of have a dividing line where yes, but I still don't approve of giving puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to children, etc. So that would be my question.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. I wish we knew. And again, if we get funding to do this, that's one of our goals is to find out the answers to those questions. All right, I'm going to move to. Okay, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this. Oh, Adam World. Is that it? Adam World? Maybe.
Yep, that's it. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I just appreciate being in this conversation, hearing some perspectives from Democrats who are concerned about this as well, because sometimes it feels like there's not enough voices in that regard that are speaking out, and I think that is going to be very important moving forward. Just to kind of share a little bit of my perspective, I was pretty opposed to Trump when he was running and when he was president, and I was supportive of Biden because I was hoping that he would be a unifier. And I think, like a lot of people, have been pretty horrified by everything that has happened over the past 4 years, especially. And my feeling is at the time, I felt like there was a good chance that that Biden was going to win, just because I felt like there was enough people who were opposed to Trump. But now I kind of feel like things have changed. I feel like there's a change in the wind in terms of uh, people's support of the Democratic Party, and so it just kind of seems to me that the chances of both in the U.S. and in Canada this to flip things politically, I think is if I was to guess is what I'm seeing what is going to happen. But the problem, as I see it now, is how do you get now that Pandora's box is open, how do you get that closed again? And I know for me, what really shifted my mentality when I was trying to figure all this stuff out, it was kind of back when trans rights or human rights was being spoken of quite a bit. And in my head, I kind of went through that and was like, yeah, that makes sense, right? But then when trans women are women started happening, that's the part where I kind of went, okay, now you guys have gone too far, and this is just the kind of thing that's going to cause problems. And that I guess just to kind of close on that without any answers, just kind of moving forward, I think there is definitely an issue here of trying to backtrack to some degree. And how do we rebalance all of this now that everything has kind of gone out of whack? What's going to happen over the next few years? And I definitely think that Democrats need to kind of stand up and say, hey, this is never something that we signed up for, what we wanted to be a part of. And there's going to be a lot of rebuilding there that needs to be done. So those are just my thoughts. I just wanted to share those. And thanks for letting me have a moment here.
Yeah, thank you. And I do think that question of how do we rebuild? I mean, I think that the politicians, the clinicians, the educators, all the people who are pushing this and promoting it do not realize what the fallout is going to be. And I think what's coming is going to be really tragic. And so I think we're going to have um, infrastructure and programs available to help people. And there's going to be a lot. So yeah, it's something I think about a lot. Okay, I'm going to, Emmy Pinkhurst has been on for a while, but didn't have her hand raised. So Emmy, let's hear from you.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. I was going to ask kind of a bigger, what's the 30,000 foot view objective question, but I was just looking through the website while listening to some other people, so I'll drop that question. But I'd love to know, are you all planning on organizing some face-to-face get-togethers? Because I think it's terrific that we're all virtual. But I think in a country as big as ours, especially in the blue areas, to help those of us who have some similar viewpoints on this issue, to find ways for us to find each other and build that trust that comes from seeing one another in person, I think is really important too. As much as I definitely agree with what I was reading on your website about messaging both to media organizations and to, personalities who, like, the Jon Stewarts and the Bill Maher's, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about that. Thank you.
I would like to answer that because I think it's a good question, and but I want people to have time to speak, and so maybe this is something that we'll talk about, because I do want to do in their space. We'll want to do a space about what we can provide to people, but that one, connecting people, has always been something that's on our list. So I'm going to go ahead and go to um, parents with inconvenient truths.
Yes, hi. Thank you for starting this, DIAG. And I just want to say I'm a parent of a deceased son. He was trans identified for over 4 years. He was estranged for 14 months, and he is back. He didn't harm himself. He realized that it was all not what he needed. But when he was a teenager, he was adamant about getting hormones. So much so that the school went against us. They considered us abusive parents. And this is what's happening to kids. The schools think, oh, they have horrible parents because they won't help them transition, this poor trans kid. And my son is so grateful that we didn't do that. And he's very happy today. But this is what we have to stop, this idea that there are trans kids, because they're just confused kids. And my story is really great, but I know tons of parents whose kids are still in it, and it's harmful. And there are parents like me out there, and we do exist. Our kids, and there's so many, you don't even know how many desisted kids are out there, but they're out there in plenty. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Couldn't be happier for you. It gives us all hope. Okay, we've got 6 minutes left. Let's see who's next. Do you want? Let's see. Let's do KX Priestess 84. You were dropping out and dropping in.
Yeah, I want to say this because you asked for somebody who is somewhat against you all, which I am. Now I'm for parent notification. I am for, if people want to transition, they need to wait to be an adult. Okay, so let me just say that off the bat. I am somewhat with y'all on that. I came out at 34. I've been on HRT for now more than 4 years. I am happier and healthier now than I've ever been in my life. I've read the studies. I've read dissenting studies. I've read studies for it. I did almost a year's worth of research before I started HRT. I've listened to people who have detransitioned, and that still are okay with people who are trans, and those like Prisha and Chloe who are vehemently against anybody who is transitioning. Look, let's leave adults out of this, okay? Let adults transition in our own free will. I was a Democrat. I'm a centrist. I vote based on basically centrist ideology. I am not an ideology. Trans people are not an ideology. We are not the bad people of the world. And it's sickening to hear the hate towards people like me as if I am what is wrong in society. I am with you all on kids. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes to adults, it really should come down to our personal liberty. I mean, last time I checked, there's still life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in this country. And I get that you all believe the science is against people like me, and that's fine. But it should be our choice. And that's pretty much the big things. It should be by choice for adults. It should not be something that we are being told we can't do it, or like Ohio tried to put in all these, hoops, just like Missouri did. And they're both been taken aback. And now there's the back door with liability insurance and malpractice, trying to do backdoor bans or do what they did in Florida, which they shouldn't have done, because this should be adults making decisions for ourselves. And that's the sad part about this country, is the fact that we have a constitution, but I keep being told it doesn't it doesn't belong to me anymore. I'm not covered under it because for some reason I'm trans, and I keep getting bullied and saying I'm mentally ill, or I'm a groomer, or I'm a criminal for some reason, and that every bad thing that happens, like just because somebody shoots up, it's trans, that must be everybody's a shooter or everyone's a sexual assaulter, and that's just not true. And that's the sad part. And look, you all can believe as you want, but I somewhat agree with you. But when it comes to adults, we should be left alone. That's really all I want to say about that.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us and for speaking. I appreciate it. Okay, let's. We only have a couple of minutes left. Let's see. Let's go to Amber.
Hello?
Yep. Hi.
Okay, can you guys hear me? It said connect.
Yeah, we can.
I was having a
We can
connection
hear you.
problem. All right. Anyway, hello. I am a writer by trade, I guess, but I also have been in leftist activism for decades, 2 decades now. And I was ostracized because of this, which was shocking to me. I know somebody else mentioned they had a similar experience. So, I've gone through a period where I'm like, I really would like to be working on other things besides this. There are so many problems in our society where it's just like, um is this the best focus for me right now? But the sad reality is that the options are closed for me for all of my activist endeavors except for in this arena. So I don't have a choice. But all that being said, that's my background. That's why I'm here right now. Um, but political strategy is sort of my hobby, you could say. And I think the Democrats, they need us right now. Like, we're in a very unique position during an election year, and they need our votes. So I think, like, very assertively, taking our stance within the Democratic Party and, saying, yes, we do belong here, because, you know, that's basically what has happened to me and many others, is that we've been sort of kicked out of the Democratic Party in a sense. But I think that they have forgotten that they really do need us. Like, they need feminists. Women are their backbone. They need mothers. They need all of these demographics that they are alienating. So I think there's an opportunity to get them to listen to us. Not unlike what happened during 2016 with Bernie Sanders and, the progressive wing uh, really got themselves taken seriously, where, the Democratic Party was like, how can we make them happy? And we have that opportunity. And because somebody else mentioned, this is really gonna really, I think when it comes to light fully, this is going to look bad for the Democrats, that they've wholeheartedly supported some of these things. And I think it's going to help them to have rational voices who have been speaking up and who are within the party. I think they don't see it, but ultimately it's in their best interest to have people like us stay within the Democratic Party and, assert ourselves. And, like I said, they need our votes. They don't want freaking Trump to win. We don't want Trump to win again. Dear Lord, I can't even believe that it's happening. But anyway, that's
All right.
all I have to say.
Thank you, Amber. We appreciate having the voice of a young person here. Okay, we're we're gonna wrap up in a sec. Let's go, Jane, and I know Chris was here, but Chris seems to have left. Billboard Chris seems to have left. I don't know what happened to him. But oh,
Hey,
Jane, did you want to talk?
oh, is that who you called on next? I thought you said Jane.
Yeah, I did, Jane.
Okay. Oh, well then I'll be brief because I really appreciate the fact that you've kind of let everybody step up to the mic, so that's really refreshing. I am absolutely convinced that we have rounded a corner. I'm a school teacher. I live in Oregon, so it's kind of ground central out here. And I'm excited to see this because this was what I had sort of been sitting and waiting for was to kind of get in there in my own party. I do think even though we've turned a corner, I think it's all of this has gone in with barbs, and so to kind of extract it, it's going to be difficult. We're never going to be the same again because people have been damaged. And I mean, I don't want to be caustic, but the person who spoke, not the last person, the person who spoke before, saying, you know, I'm sorry, he feels that or she that he's trans. I personally don't know that I think anybody is. I think there needs to be an informed approach even for grown ups because these are powerful hormones and they can't just be handed out to just anybody who sort of says they have a feeling. And you know, I mean, the whole nine yards, everything everyone's been saying this entire time, the kids, the women's sports, the women's spaces. So I think this is just, you know, past due. I'm a little worried. I wish this had happened 6 years ago because everything that's people sort of seem to know. At my job now, people coming and going, "Oh, did you know?" I'm like, I knew that 5 years ago, and I have spoken up at my job as much as I could. I definitely feel that if I did it now, I don't think it would be as scary as it was before. But I want to thank you for, you know, you and this group of people, whoever you guys are. I'm thankful that people are gathering together because this was exactly what I think we needed. Just a group of Democrats to say, this is not who we are. This is not what we do. This is not how we dole out medicine in any other arena. You know, just show up and get hormones. I mean, if you want to turn this into move it to the cosmetic field, I think that that's fair. I think that that would be a perfectly fair thing to do. But anyway, I wanted to thank you, and I think you want to wrap up the space. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. We're gonna just have Alex and then Justin. We're gonna wrap it up. We're already over time, but let's just a quick minute each, and then we'll call it. So Alex, go ahead.
Hey, you asked about sort of the talking points, and this is something that I've definitely come across a lot. I just want to preface by saying I don't believe these points, but these are some of the things that they say, I guess. One of them being that the science demonstrates its efficacy and safety pertaining to puberty blockers, an alleged risk of increased suicide. Um, there's guilt, not allowing people to live their quote unquote truth. There's allegations that trying to help an individual who identifies as trans be content with their biological sex is labeled as conversion therapy. Another one of the talking points is people know who they are. Sometimes another one of the talking points is they hate us because we have concern for them, obviously. We're being genocided when obviously we know this isn't the truth. And just lastly, it's evident to me that they're following the same playbook as the LGB movement of the 90s and whatnot. And as you already mentioned earlier, some of the other talking points are issues around passing and the ongoing gender dysphoria that would likely linger if they didn't pass.
Yep, those are great. And to say we are going to address some of these things on the website. You know, we do have some holes in the website that we'll be filling, and so one of the things is, you know, not to use those responses in conversation because I don't think they work, but so that people understand why those things are either red herrings or they're not valid. So keep checking our website. Justin, let's hear from you.
Hi there, Justine, girl.
Sorry about that. I
Oh,
only
no
see
problem.
Justin.
Hey, I founded Gender Health Query. It's a medical and queer theory watchdog organization for concerned homosexual and bisexual people. There's a lot of information on our website. We have a bunch of topics. It's genderhq.org, and it refutes some of these arguments like, oh, they have to pass. And I think having people that are sort of within the sort of rainbow realms make some of those arguments is helpful. Like, for example, a lot of people don't know that people who like to date homosexual transsexuals don't want them to look excessively feminized. They don't want to have their sex organs stunted, right? So there's little things like that where you can make stronger arguments that actually, even if they're going to be persistently trans identified, they still need to go through puberty. They still need sexual maturation, bone maturation, all of that. So that's one thing. The other thing, real quick, thank you for letting me talk. We're doing a schools project to argue against radical gender activism in schools. And it's obviously from a centrist position that's obviously fairly pro gay to kind of counter the narrative that this is all sort of Republicans pushing back against this. Because in the UK, it's been primarily liberal women and LGBT people that have been a huge part of the pushback there. Please, if you're interested in that, it's at Gender HQ on Twitter. In about a month, we're going to be releasing this publicly. We would love help circulating it. We're going to distribute hard copies. I think it's a very well argued, articulated document. And thank you so much for letting me speak. I probably pinged you multiple times. I was having horrible technical difficulties, and I'm sorry if I bothered you a lot.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody. Please follow if you're interested in the school issue, because I want to
Justine,
help
if you
people.
could,
Yeah.
please DM us when that's happening, and we'll promote it on the website.
Yeah. Oh, one more really quick thing. One thing we did for Gender Health Query is we put a petition on our website. I don't know if this would help you, since a lot of you want to be anonymous, but maybe there's Democrats that are very willing not to be anonymous. And if you put up some kind of petition on your website with people's names, I don't know how effective that would be, but it's just an idea to throw out there. People might be willing to put their name down as a Democrat on your website.
Okay, thank you. We'll be thinking about all these ideas. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for everybody who came, and I'll say, the power is in our numbers right now. We, in order to have a real voice, we need to increase our visibility, and that means increasing our numbers. So if you know people who fit our profile, people who are ready for this to be over and for Democrats to stop promoting this, please talk to them, get them to join, come to our website. They can see for themselves who we are, join our next space. And we'll keep everybody posted. See you at the next, or hear you at the next space. Thank you for joining.